everyone, Amina here with the Float Small Business Podcast, speaking with Salman Sajun, founder of Salman Sajun Studio, about how he's gotten creative as a small business owner during this difficult time. Hey Sal, thanks for joining.
Hey, Amina. Thanks so much for inviting me. It's been absolutely fantastic to see this effort that you put together with Float. It was so humbling to see that, during this crazy time, you were able to just quickly, cover so much ground and just stand there and champion a voice for everyone else who was kind of hurting. It was awesome to see. It kind of gave me energy on this side, on this side of the border, to be like, that's awesome to see that there's people like that doing this. So it's my pleasure to be here. Happy to talk to you.
Thank you. Obviously, I know what it is that you guys do, but people that are new to this podcast may not know what it is that your studio does. So can you kind of can you walk us through what it is that you normally do, and then the biggest ways that you've had to pivot?
We're a content creation agency. But we do everything from content strategy, content ideation, to content production. And being a boutique agency allows us to kind of service all different types of clients. And really, our passion is around telling really meaningful brand stories and having really rich creative around brands and advertising. I might be getting too deep into this, but we were chatting about this the other day as well. It's like there's no brand that's born out of every brand is born out of blood, sweat, and tears. They all are there to kind of that's even if it's a product, whatever the business is, they're doing it because either they're solving a problem or there's a real love for it, and they're really good at that. And so we like coming in, understanding that story, and then finding the best way to kind of help them generate more. So that's
awesome.
That's our stick. But and I mean, it's not something uniquely new in the world. There's a lot of companies like yourself as well that do an amazing job at it. We kind of lend ourselves a lot on the design side. We're very, I guess, playful, minimalistic, and colorful at the end of the day. So a lot of our stuff and a lot of our creative lends itself to like a whimsical, magical way of kind of telling the story. So
how have you had to pivot then? Since I mean, so you're design centric, so couldn't it be argued that you can already do that from afar? Like, have you had to pivot much, or has it been a really big transformation?
With COVID hitting and having the distancing and having everything kind of shut down, we've had the luxury of being able to work with work from home studios. So we've been able to turn around similar, like almost the same content we've been creating, but with different sort of with a different workflow. So it took a little bit. The pivot for us was trying to figure out what's the best workflow. How do we make it happen? There's tons and tons of calls like this that we do every day, all day, whether it be with clients or with the team, and figuring out and doing alignment. And then with that, like, what are our limitations? So when we're conceptualizing, like, we don't like to put the technique before the actual idea, but since these limitations exist, we've had to box ourselves in a little bit more, and then be like, all right, this is the approach we can kind of go with.
Right.
So we haven't had to pivot a whole lot because.
But it sounds like the pivots you made were really important, and I think that it sounds like the pivots that you've had to make are pivots that a lot of other businesses around the world are having to make, whether they're in the same field as you or not. A lot of people are having to do a similar thing. So I'm curious, what were some of the challenges? Because you said that it took a little bit of time to kind of iron out that new workflow. What were some of the challenges that you faced, and what is some advice that other people can kind of learn from about how you navigated those challenges and how you ultimately got it to work?
Right. So I guess the challenge was not being around the team. What's really nice is, when you're doing a brainstorm and you have a brief, or you have, you're just kind of chatting it out and throwing stuff on the wall and working with Post-its and getting it all happening in a team environment. To me, that was a big challenge. Like, that was a little bit tougher to do that remotely. Now, it's not that it was tougher in the sense that we because we're still chatting. I found that engagement increased, like we're really talking to each other. Whereas when you're sitting with people, sometimes, you drift away, or someone will have a phone. Whereas when you're like this, you really have to engage. So in that sense, there were some positives that came along with it. But the
Interesting.
challenge from my side was when you're in a space with people, there's a different vibe and energy, and it just works differently. So we had to kind of all adjust to that. I think we adjusted fairly quick to it, but that was definitely an adjustment.
The energy is different and it might take a little longer.
Yes, exactly. I mean,
Okay.
I think now we've kind of gotten to a place where we're doing, a few more pulse checks throughout the day, and we've kind of there was a new shorthand that had to be learned with just messaging, which exists with our which exists with our post-production team for sure, because our post-production team just doesn't work with us.
Mm.
They're computer junkies and they don't want to sit with us. So
Okay.
they're around the world as well. So for on
Okay.
the post side,
Nice.
nothing changed. The post side was business as usual because we've always just given notes in the same ways. We have our templated documents. They know
Nice.
exactly, how to like how that part works. But production and pre and production, I would say mostly in production is where when working on it distance, like if there's our gaffer slash DOP telling us, oh no, you should probably move this way, or let's get, because we're working in smaller contained studio situations. It's harder to do that without a true team and a true crew. So
Yep.
in that sense, there was definitely some adjustments to make, but I think we've kind of figured it out, and we've started to bake in that extra time needed to kind of make
Got
that
it.
happen.
So that was the adjustment then. It was baking in
Yeah,
more
yeah,
time to deal with
yeah,
that situation.
yeah,
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 that
yeah.
makes sense.
We should be really mindful of the fact that things can kind of revert back to something like this. So we shouldn't get super comfortable in one way of working. We should just be, we should think about how can we be more agile and not have to just rely on one sort of workflow.
Yeah. Spoken like a true entrepreneur, right? I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs love about owning their own business, and especially kind of in the startup mentality. It's like you put something out there, you get feedback, you iterate, and change is sort of the name of the game. And but that's maybe more in the startup world, and for some more established small businesses, I can see how that would be a hard thing to grasp, because while some small businesses may love the freedom of having their own thing, they found a workflow that finally, after years of honing it and tweaking it, now all of a sudden it just works, and then a pandemic hits. And so I guess, do you have any advice for those businesses who have been working for years to really solidify a way of being and a way of operating, and now it's like a mind shift that has to happen? What you're
Yeah.
saying, because I think it's so true, right? We can never get comfortable. But what do you have to
hmm
say to those people who have gotten comfortable and now are tremendously uncomfortable because of it?
I mean, it's fact, right? Like, it's not that no one can go around this. This is the new reality. Like, this is just what it is. You can't change that. So, like any business, be it a startup or anything else, if you don't adapt, you die, right? Like, if you don't adapt or adapt to the reality that there's no oxygen on this planet, you have to have some other way to breathe. Like, if you don't, you just choose to go out and say no, there will suddenly come oxygen. It's not going to happen. I feel like there is going to be a lot of innovation that's going to come with this.
Yeah.
The advice would be is just being sensitive to what's happening around you and trying to find what is it that'll kind of give you that edge, or how can you innovate in a situation like this.
Yeah. I'm curious to also hear about your perception as a Canadian, of the different approaches that governments are taking, because I'm now a dual citizen. I just became a U.S. citizen a few weeks ago, but
Yeah.
I'm also Canadian, and so I've been paying attention to. I mean, I'm very interested in what different countries are doing in general, but certainly my two homes and the comparison. From what I've seen on the news, it seems like Canada is being generous with its offerings. But that's from my perspective in Portland, Oregon. You're there. What is
Yeah.
your perspective of how Canada is handling it versus some other countries?
I think they're doing the best they can under given the current circumstances. I think that hats off to them for setting up all the things that they have set up.
And what's your impression of the financial support that has come to companies and businesses from the government?
From what I've heard and seen, like fortunately we haven't had to kind of go down that route. But from what I've heard and seen, it's been quite good. Like people have been, been able to reach out, and they have been able to kind of get help when needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think similar to our like small business, there I think people are respecting it. People are realizing that even if they can, they won't if they don't need to, right? So we were in a similar boat
Wow.
where we could, but we're like, that's not, I think there's right now things are still moving and we're able to adapt and work. So why go down that route? So I found that this sense of camaraderie is strong, and people are really in it together. Like
That's
I didn't
beautiful.
it doesn't feel like people are like, oh my gosh, great, this is a handout, let's all stand in line and let's make it happen. Because there are some people who are hurting, and if you aren't, and people are stepping out of that line to be like, yeah, I think you should go first, sort of thing. So
Yeah.
in that sense, is nice.
That's really great. Yeah. And it's not surprising.
Hmm.
That's one thing that I do love about Canadians is that there is a sense of togetherness. Um,
Yeah.
and that's one of the reasons also why I love Portland here.
All
There's
right.
a similar kind of community, we're in this together sort of feeling. And
Hmm.
it's why I really love this place. Because people care about each other. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of community I want to be a part of. I'm really glad to hear that you're doing well, your family's doing well, your team is doing well. Thank you so much for sharing your
Of
insights.
course.
And,
Of course.
I know that your studio is still relatively young, right? You
Yeah.
came
Yeah.
from a bigger company and branched
Hmm.
off and started your own thing a few years ago. And I know that it's been flourishing. And so, hats off to you for continuing to thrive and to pivot as you need to during
Hmm.
this incredibly difficult time.
No, thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a day to day. It changes day to day. So let's see how it moves and how we kind of all adapt and how we all move to it. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I hope we're out of this soon enough, and we're out of it with a renewed sense of ourselves, our services, and our community and economy, because it's gonna be it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be an interesting next few years for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thank you and good luck.
Yeah. Thanks so much.